battle tanks, fighter jets and long-range precision missiles, Volodymyr Zelensky has had much of his wish list met thanks to his Western allies. But now, with the Russians advancing on a daily basis and Donald Trump pushing for peace, Zelensky unveiled his most audacious proposal yet. He wants a peacekeeping force larger than France's entire military.
As the Russian artillery thunders through the front lines, Ukraine's war-torn fields are alight with relentless combat. Russian forces are advancing steadily. Moscow claims it has captured a village near Kharkiv. The Ukrainian military says Russian forces are firing over 6,000 artillery shells daily, along with 3,000 kamikaze drones. Against this onslaught, Ukraine's forces find themselves increasingly outgunned and outnumbered. As Trump's return to the White House signals a potential shift in US support, Zelensky is pivoting towards Europe with a startling request, seeking 200,000 allied troops to guarantee any future peace deal. The number of troops is equivalent to France's entire military.
200,000, it's a minimum. It's a minimum. Otherwise, it's nothing. Otherwise, it's something, like somebody, like we had OSCE, and nobody knew where they can help you. They had offices, and that's all.
Zelensky's request comes as Western support for Kyiv shows signs of wavering. While billions in military aid have bolstered Ukraine's war effort under Joe Biden's presidency, the return of Donald Trump to the White House complicates matters. Trump, who has pledged to negotiate peace, offers no clear roadmap, fueling uncertainty over future US involvement. He now warns Russia of fresh sanctions.
You've called for a ceasefire in Ukraine. If Vladimir Putin doesn't come to the table to negotiate with you, will you put additional sanctions on Russia?
Sounds likely.
And do you think that the war should be frozen currently along
the
with
war should have never
lines?
started. If you had a competent president, which you didn't, the war wouldn't have happened. The war in Ukraine would have never happened if I were president.
In his address to the World Economic Forum, Zelensky calls on Europe to step up its defense spending, warning that the continent's security is at stake. However, the ground reality is daunting. Decades of underfunding have left Europe's militaries depleted, with many nations struggling to replenish weapons stocks or recruit sufficient personnel. The younger generation is often declined to enlist, even as geopolitical threats grow. Deploying such a massive force, even if European nations agree, would pose logistical and financial challenges. Who will bear this enormous cost? Will NATO risk its soldiers in a conflict zone against a nuclear-armed adversary? Bureau Report WION, World is One.
Dr. Sergei Sumleny is a defense expert and director, European Resilience Initiative Center. He is now joining us live from Berlin. Dr. Sumleny, good to see you. Thank you very much for making time for us. Do you think Europe can field an army for Ukraine?
Great to be a guest. Thank you for this honor. Always a pleasure for me. Yes, it is a need to, of course, to support Ukraine on that way or another. And as President Zelensky has seen that during the recent months, Ukraine doesn't get enough armed support. Of course, he looks for other options. Mm-hmm. And as the voices for freezing the war are getting louder, he demonstrates what kind of freezing this war would be an efficient way without making this ceasefire into just a preparation phase for Russia to accumulate more power, more strength, and to attack Ukraine again. And when we're talking about the number, 200,000 soldiers, it seems to be like, it looks to be a large number, but don't forget, the front line itself is over 2,000 kilometers. So it's not that much troops for that scale. If you compare the size of this peacekeeping force with the foreign armies located in Western Germany during the Cold War or South Korea, you will see that compared to the front line, it is not that big number of troops which President Zelensky is mentioning. And he, for right, stresses that any idea to send, let me say, 10,000, 50,000 troops will not help to really stabilize the line if Russia decides in 6 months, in 1 year, to attack again.
Dr. Sumleni, then who will bear the cost of deploying those 200,000 peacekeeper or peacekeeping troops to Ukraine?
Well, that is a very interesting question. And I think that first we need to understand that price of freezing this war is much higher, way more higher than a price of winning this war. And that is the dilemma. If you don't want to win the war, and this war can be won by Ukraine if Ukraine would have got enough weapons and a permission to use it. Don't forget, the United States have never provided Ukraine with any fighter jets. All F-16 which Ukraine is flying have come from the Netherlands and the Dutch and the Danish forces. And the United States have provided Ukraine with 31 Abrams tanks, while having several thousands being just storaged in the desert and waiting for the time, never being used. So if we would have provided Ukraine with all the weapons we have already on the storage, this war would have been won already in 22 or maybe 23. And now the decision is, what do you want to do? Do you want to give Ukraine this weapon and help Ukraine to win this war and to return control of its own territory? Or do you want to freeze this war? But freezing this war can be only done from the position of strength. And to keep the balance in favor of Ukraine, to keep the situation stabilized, you need to invest much more money, having troops, having weapons, etc. on the ground. Then you need to have to win this war. I can bring one very short comparison. If you imagine yourself climbing in the mountains, it takes much more power to hang constantly on a cliff than just to put yourself over the cliff and have a rest. So winning the war is pulling yourself over the cliff and having a rest. And freezing the front line is hanging forever on the cliff. That requires enormous amount of money and manpower.
All right. Dr. Sergei Sumleni, it's good to always talk to you. Thank you very much for your insights and for talking to us today.
Thank you so much.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.